Columbus, even with some changes since last year's playoffs, they know this works. They swept a much more powerful Tampa Bay Lightning team last year than even what the Maple Leafs are heading into this qualifying series. I think it's going to be tough, even though it's not the big bad Boston Bruins the Leafs are getting this time around.
Well, for the first time in a very long time, Maple Leaf fans are preparing for their team to head into the playoffs. And Chris Johnston, they are going up a team that isn't the Boston Bruins. I know for a lot of Leaf fans, that's relief. There's been a lot of heartbreak there. It's a bit of a sensitive area, but the Columbus Blue Jackets are no slouch considering the fact that they are defensive, they are stingy, they are big, they are mean. So when you look at it on paper, Chris, how does this version of the Maple Leafs this year match up against this version of the Columbus Blue Jackets?
Well, I happen to think this is a really difficult matchup for the Maple Leafs, if only because of what you're highlighting there, some of the stylistic differences, the fact we're coming out of 4 to 5 months off with the season being paused, and that the Leafs are built on such high-end offensive talent. I think that there's a huge possibility that Columbus's defensive acumen could frustrate the Leafs, could get them to a point where they're not clicking at the level they want, especially after this kind of break since they've last played a meaningful game. And so, there's probably never what we would call an easy matchup, but I do think that this one poses some unique challenges for Toronto because they don't have very long in a best of 5 to get comfortable, to get clicking on that level. And, obviously Columbus, even with some changes since last year's playoffs, they know this works. They swept a much more powerful Tampa Bay Lightning team last year than even what the Maple Leafs are heading into this qualifying series. And so it's a sort of chess match kind of feel. And I think it's going to be tough, even though it's not the big bad Boston Bruins the Leafs are getting this time around.
Now, you mentioned the Bruins, and when you look back at past Leafs and Bruins series, they were big and mean, just like the Blue Jackets, and they leaned on guys like Mitch Marner and Austin Matthews, and at times seemed to frustrate them and maybe shut them down and limit them. They were younger then. Now they're on big-time deals. There's a lot of expectations, a lot of pressure. How much pressure do you think maybe the fans, the media, the front office will be looking at Mitch Marner and Austin Matthews and thinking this is the time to step up and really make a name for yourself?
Well, there'll be an element of that for sure. But, I think the fact that this will be their 4th playoff series, the 4th straight year that they've gone into this kind of scenario will benefit them. It's nothing new. I guess it's new for everyone, the idea there's no fans and all the things around the games. But in terms of handling games of this stakes, that would carry this stakes, that have this magnitude, and both these guys have performed quite well. I mean, they've put up numbers in the previous playoff series. I don't think the reason the Leafs failed to get by the first round in those 3 years, really can be pinned to those individuals too much. And I think what'll be interesting this time is that, since Sheldon Keefe has took over midway through this year, we've seen, those two players spend a lot of time together, which is something they didn't do in the past. And, while I expect Keefe to jumble the lines around much more than Mike Babcock did, during the series with Columbus, I do think that you'll see Marner and Matthews on the ice a fair bit together. And that was a pretty potent combination for them during the regular season. So, just by the nature of who they are and their contracts, they have to carry the Leafs, I think, in a lot of ways. But, we've seen them do that time and time again. And I would expect it'll be no different, come this restart.
Now, speaking of pressure on certain players, when you look at a guy like Freddy Andersen throughout this course of the season, he's been very good at times and at times maybe not so good. Just how much pressure is there on him after a long layoff for a guy who seems to be maybe a notoriously slow starter?
Well, there's all of that. I think this is the first time actually of Freddy Andersen's 4 playoff appearances in Toronto where there's a little bit of question mark about him. He had by statistically anyway his worst NHL season this year. Then you add in the fact there's this pause, so that creates an unknown. And as you mentioned there, he's been a pretty slow starter generally in October at the beginning of a season. And so you mix all that together and add in the fact it's a 3 out of 5 versus a 4 out of 7. And, I think there's high potential for this to be a major storyline in the series. It's kind of interesting at the other end, the Blue Jackets have 2 goalies in Elvis Merzlikins and Jonas Korpisalo. Neither of them's played in the playoffs in their careers in the NHL, but, that tandem with that defense in front of them was, one of the best. They had the 4th best team goals against average in the league this year. And so, I think goaltending is always important in the playoffs. I think it's even more crucial in a short series like this one. And Freddy Andersen, this is an opportunity for him too to I think salvage this season in a way, and to put an exclamation mark on what was an up and down year for him. And if not, I mean, he's heading into the final year of his deal. That's going to be a major storyline around Toronto.
Well, it wouldn't be Toronto if there wasn't plenty of question marks, high expectations, lots of pressure. But Chris, maybe the biggest question mark is, can the Maple Leafs finally make it out of the first round? We'll find out. Thanks for doing this, Chris.
Thank you.